When we celebrate the feast day of trumpets, Yom Teruah, exactly what is it that we're celebrating? Hi, this is Barry Phillips with 10-Minute Torah, day number 3 of the special readings pertaining to Yom Teruah. Leviticus chapter 23, that is Vayikra 23, verse 23 says, And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th new moon, on the first day of the new moon, you have a rest, a remembrance of Teruah, a set-apart gathering. You do no servile work, and you bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. So the instructions are, we have a set-apart gathering. We bring an offering. We celebrate a remembrance of noise. A remembrance of shouting or soundings. It's not necessarily saying anything about the shofar. It could be. Certainly a shofar would make a great deal of noise. But how is it that we are to celebrate, and what is the focal point? Now, in the Hebraic Roots community, we gather celebrating the coronation of our returning king. And that's worthy. That's something to be celebrated. That's something to get excited about. But as far as what the Torah is describing, that's not necessarily what it says, at least in our English translations. And if we go to Bamidbar, Numbers chapter number 29, it says in verse 1, And in the 7th new moon, on the first day of the new moon, you have a set-apart gathering. You do no servile work. It is Yom Teruah for you. Same instructions. And you shall prepare an ascending offering as a sweet fragrance to Yahweh, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs, a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offerings, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the ram, and 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs, and 1 male goat as a sin offering to make atonement for you. Besides the ascending offerings with its grain offerings for the new moon, the continual ascending offerings with its grain offerings, and their drink offerings, according to their right ruling, as a sweet fragrance, an offering made by fire to Yahweh. Then we go into Yom Kippur's instructions. So we have greater detail in the book of Bamidbar about what these offerings are. We have an ascending offering. We have a sin offering, a katat. We have the daily continual tamid offerings, a lamb in the morning at 9 and another one at 3 in the afternoon. And because it's the new moon, there are new moon offerings. So again, what is this all about? So let's go with the motif or the theme of noise. There's an occasion that may speak to us a little bit more about a potential connection from the life of Yeshua about Yom Teruah. Let's go over to the book of Yochanan, John chapter number 12, and we're again going into the Pesach season. Now, yesterday we tried to make a connection between Pesach and Yom Teruah. This continues that idea a little bit further. The chapter opens 6 days before Pesach. And then we're very close to the 4th day area where Yeshua sits on a donkey and rides into Jerusalem. And over the next 4 days, he's going to be examined by the priest verbally. They're going to interview him repetitively. And Pontius Pilate is finally going to make the announcement, I find no fault in him. And this spotless lamb then is offered up on Pesach. Now, when we read, we will begin with verse number 23 again. This is Yochanan 12, verse 23. And Yeshua answered them, saying, The hour has come for the Son of Adam to be esteemed. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. He who loves his life shall lose it, and he who hates his life in this world shall preserve it for everlasting life. If anyone serves me, let him follow me, and where I am, there my servant also shall be. If anyone serves me, the Father shall value him. Now the emotion of the moment begins to be revealed. Yeshua says in verse 27, Now I myself am troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? But for this reason I came to this hour. Father, esteem your name. Then a voice came from heaven, I have both esteemed it and shall esteem it again. So the crowd who stood by and heard it were saying that there had been thunder. Others said, a messenger has spoken to him. Now we'll pause there for a moment. A noise. The sounding of Yah's voice that Yeshua discerned, and evidently Yochanan discerned, for he was able to pen the translation of what was said, by the most of the people was heard simply as a roll or a clap of thunder, and some others said perhaps a messenger of Elohim has spoken to him. Evidently there was some large dramatic moment where Yeshua is hearing the voice of his Father. Some around him are hearing that voice, clearly understanding what has been said, and others it's just a bunch of noise. This kind of reminds me of the gathering of Am Yisrael at Mount Sinai when the 10 words are given. Moshe, and evidently some of the elders or of the people, heard the voice of Elohim and knew what he was saying, while most were only shaking in their sandals and so afraid and terrified at the sound of the shofar that increased in volume that they thought they were going to die. In the sounding of the shofar is the voice of Yah, if you're able to hear it. In the clap of the thunder, the rolling of the thunder, there is the voice of Elohim, if you're able to discern it. In the noise of all that is being said in our current day, there is the voice of Yah being spoken to us if we have the capacity to discern it. What is his voice saying? I think it's saying similarly to what Yeshua heard. Yeshua was recognizing the intensity of the hour and the nearness and impending moment of his death. He gave the clue to his followers, saying that a grain of wheat has to fall into the ground and die in order for something of life to spring forth. Otherwise, you only maintain the kernel or the grain of wheat. It is in the planting in the earth, the sowing to the ground, that is the motif or the theme of personal death, then that something greater than oneself can rise up. Now, there was no one greater than Yeshua, but the resurrected version of Yeshua is even superior to the physical pre-existing version. Many years ago, Yah spoke something to me that I really didn't want to hear. There's another type of circumstance, but he spoke to me very clearly. When something dies and then is resurrected, the resurrected version is superior to the original. Now, what I knew that he was speaking of, I didn't want to let go of, but I also knew it was time. This thing had to die so something greater and of more value could be raised up. Yeshua went on to help us to understand that what was taking place was the judgment of this world. Maybe we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But in order for the power to defeat the darkness to be received or understood, there has to be the death of self. There is something greater than your current estate that is available, but it only is available to you once this part of us dies. We'll talk about this tomorrow and explain it a little bit further. Until then, shalom.